In 2020, something didn't add up. When fear replaced common sense and critical thinking, and protocols stopped matching what we were seeing, a lot of us started asking questions. And once you start digging, once you start researching, you can't unsee it. Welcome to Nurses Out Loud. I'm Jodi O'Malley, ER nurse and nursing ethics educator. And this is where we talk truth, patient rights, and real-world healthcare so you can make informed decisions and advocate with confidence. If you've been looking for your people, here we are. If this resonates, if you find yourself nodding along, please like, follow, and share this show with at least one person who needs it. And if this episode offers continuing education credit, check the show notes for learning objectives, disclosures, and exactly how to earn your certificate. This episode of Nurses Out Loud is sponsored by West Cocoa Pharmacy in Cocoa, Florida. If you've been looking for a pharmacy that thinks outside the one-size-fits-all box, West Cocoa Pharmacy partners with licensed prescribers to create individualized prescription-only compounded medications. That includes ivermectin, benbendazole, fenbendazole, and other repurposed drugs, alike low-dose naltrexone, methylene blue, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, custom erectile dysfunction combinations for men, and carefully selected supplements. They also support integrative oncology care, offering compounded medications that some physicians use in alternative cancer protocols. One of my favorite parts is their free consult with Nurse Donna. She's there to provide education on evolving repurposed therapies and HRT, so you can ask better questions and have a more informed conversation with your own clinician. As always, this is not medical advice. I'm not telling you what to take. I'm pointing you to resources. Any medication or protocol should be decided between you and a licensed provider who knows your history. To learn more, visit Cocoa Pharmacy, COCOA Pharmacy.com. That's Cocoa Pharmacy, COCOA Pharmacy.com, and let them know you heard about them on Nurses Out Loud. Florida becomes the first state to announce removal of all vaccine mandates, including school requirements. This made national headlines, guys, and we're seeing these types of headlines for years now, it feels like, right? Florida's free. Florida's free. I'm moving from here to go to Florida because I want to be free. And just the other night, I was listening to a Twitter space. And I don't know if you guys know what Twitter spaces are, but they're kind of cool. It's like going back in the day where AM radio and you hear people discussing things. There's no video or anything, but the Vaccine Safety Research Foundation, headed by Steve Kirsch, VSRF, our very own Nurses Out Loud, Nicole alumni. She was a guest on the panel, and I was super stoked to see a nurse on the panel. I think we need to have more of a platform. And so the fact that she was on there and just brilliant, I was able to listen to about an hour of it, but I think it went a couple hours. Well, anyway, they were discussing things that were blowing my mind. And I was like, Nicole, you got to come on Nurses Out Loud and discuss it. So, Nicole, thank you for being on Nurses Out Loud.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here, like old times. How are you?
I'm good. Tell
Yes.
our listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and introduce yourself, please.
Yes, ma'am. So I have been a acute care bedside nurse for about 20 years. I currently run a large chest pain program in the Central Florida area. It's also very well known that I was one of 2,000 healthcare workers back in 2020 that stood up against the vaccine mandate in a very large Central Florida hospital. At the time, I was a heart transplant nurse and got to see firsthand what the vaccine was doing to those vulnerable patients. In addition to having that experience propel me to want to come forward on a local and state level to raise awareness on what the mandates were doing to healthcare workers and nurses, what the vaccine was doing to our patients, and speaking directly to our state legislators and trying to raise awareness on how bad this was. And so it has just been over the past couple years that I've continued to do that. And also am a huge medical patient and vaccine injury advocate. So it's just been really weighing on my heart to continue to raise awareness on what's really important when it comes to medical freedoms, informed consent, and bodily sovereignty in the state of Florida.
Yes, thank you. So what was Florida like back in 2020, 21? Oh, did the nurses want the shot? What was the state?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, prior to 2020, I mean, like I said, I've worked in the acute care setting for years, and I had always vaccine exempted from the flu vaccine. I am vaccinated up into a certain point, and then I just chose to stop vaccinating against certain things because it just really wasn't benefiting me and my health. And so, Florida really honored that. I didn't work for organizations that really pushed back, and so working as a nurse, it was just the same old, high patient acuity, terrible ratios, and, really worrying about, the low pay in Florida and just trying to make sure that our patients are safe. But when 2020 hit, I think there was just so much fear that for a very brief amount of time, Governor Ron DeSantis did decide to go on lockdown with the rest of the country, but that quickly ended, and so became one of the states to obviously go against the status quo. But because of all the things that were being pumped out in social media and the media, and working in Central Florida, which is a very blue city,
Yeah.
and ran by very blue candidates, there was a huge emphasis to push all things that were coming out of what the government was saying, the three-letter agencies, and really heavily emphasizing the vaccine. And so I do believe, for the most part, people felt they didn't want to get it, but they were in their mind made to feel that this was the best thing to do as a healthcare worker to protect yourself and the patients, and genuinely thinking, if they rolled up their sleeves and took one for the team, that this would be a way to end what was happening when it came to the pandemic, which we quickly learned was not the case. So at that time, the general consensus was get vaccinated, do the right thing, follow the protocols. To where I was a minority at that time, uh, God gave me some sort of discernment that I can still never explain to this day, and I chose not to. But there were a majority of people that felt that it was the right thing to do.
Mhm. And that's when your advocacy and, policy and legislation started?
Yes. So I saw a post online. There were some things being discussed about medical freedoms and ending the COVID-19 vaccine mandate. I reached out to Health Freedom Florida. Her name is Mo. I am indebted to her. She's the one who ultimately got me into this. And then I partnered with Justin Harvey with We Are Change Orlando, and it kind of just took off from there, where we would show up to our local and state government and be able to explain what we were seeing. And at the time, nurses were not coming forward. There was no one speaking publicly. Even in Florida, there was a lot of condemnation to not come forward. We were told, you could be fired, you can't go against the science. And so it was terrifying. And I have all the timestamps, I have all of the videos from our local and state government, me going in front of them with the timestamps to say what I was seeing and basically being dismissed. They did not take me seriously. They just did not feel as if it was actually happening to the magnitude that it was. And
Mm.
so I just kept showing up, and that's essentially what happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you for, listening to that still
Yeah.
small voice, and thank you for showing up,
Yeah.
because courage is actionable. You have to take action to be courageous, and once you start and you listen to that voice and you're following in his will, then you get even more challenges and you just keep leveling up. That's what I call it. Level up, level
Yeah.
up, level. You know what I mean? And
Right.
you get harder and harder and harder ones. And you certainly rose to the occasion. So thank you for that, nurses. It's in our code that we deserve a seat at the table and we need to take that seat.
Right.
We're what, 3 million active nurses in the United States, I believe.
I think it's close to
Um,
5.
Is it 5?
I thought it
Yeah,
was a
I
little high.
wanted to
Well,
say 5.
maybe since the pandemic, since we've lost hundreds of thousands, but I wanted to say it's probably between 3 and 5 million across the United
Yeah,
States.
yeah, being generous. I didn't know if we were including nurses that were active or still
Oh,
licensed. I don't know. But right, 5 million strong. Like that is a lot of voices. We see the nurses out in New York that 15,000 of them decided to strike, and then there's word coming out of California that
oh,
30,000 of them are going to strike, and it's like finally we are rising together. I what their big platforms are: safe staffing, pay, um and patient safety and nurse safety,
nurse
right?
safety.
Those are their big ones. And then they have like pensions and stuff. But Nicole, what are your what's the word I'm looking for? Your platform. Like what do you stand for more?
Well, I mean, originally I came forward because of the unconstitutional vaccine mandates, what it meant as a healthcare worker, especially as nurses, to be told that you are basically dropped to nothing just because you decided to exercise your right to bodily autonomy. So originally it was coming out to discuss how unconstitutional vaccine mandates were affecting the workforce. We were becoming more short staffed, people were leaving, they were scared, people didn't want to feel pigeonholed into getting a vaccine and not being able to work. And so it was coercion, right? Coercion is
Mhm.
not care. And so originally that's what I came forward. And then as things evolved, I became much more in depth when it came to the medical advocacy for patients, because now since we were not listening to the people in the boots on the ground, what was happening during the pandemic, more people received, these protocols and these vaccinations, and they became injured or are no longer with us. And then it evolved into being a huge patient advocate when it comes to those that have passed from the deadly hospital protocols and the vaccine injured due to the COVID-19 vaccine. However,
Mhm.
coming forward, when we decided to go pursue it from a state level, and come at our legislation back in 2023 to end all COVID-19 vaccine mandates. When we went to Tallahassee, I was blown away by the support that showed up from the parents that had vaccine injured children from the childhood vaccine schedule. So although I had an inkling, it smacked me in the face, a gut
Mhm.
punched me to see how many parents had vaccine injured children who were standing in solidarity with us to say, we've been screaming this for decades. Vaccines are harmful. They are hurting our children, and
Mhm.
some of them are dying because of it. And so they were coming to stand in solidarity with us to go against the COVID-19 vaccine mandates. And of course, where we are today with continuing to try to end all vaccine mandates.
Yes. And you guys had brought forth a bill last year, and, let's talk about that.
Yes. So there were, in Florida, you have to have a Senate and a House bill. So they have to be a companion bill to be able to present it and bring it forth to legislation. So we have to have both, which is very challenging to find legislators that are willing to take on and partner. So let's just start there. But we had Senator Clay Yarborough,
You
and
know,
we had
hold I wanna stop there to, pardon me, but a Senate bill, so you need a group of senators who believe in this bill, and then you need a group of legislators who believe in this bill to work together to bring it forward to the committee. Is that
So you have
correct?
so it's basically we're almost there. It has to be at least one senator and one House representative that is willing to go with an idea that is being presented, whether it's their idea or coming from the medical freedom groups or whatever groups that are presenting a bill, and being able to put their name on it and then be able to sit down and go through the verbiage and agree to feel comfortable with that and then file the bill. And again, if you just have one and the other, it goes nowhere. So it's dead on arrival, dead on the floor, whatever you want to call it. So you have to have both. So in this particular case, we do have a senator and a House representative, and others can back them within their respective departments,
Mhm,
but it just needs one. And then Senator Clay Yarborough happens to be the senator that led or spearheaded SB 1756, and House Representative Jeff Holcomb took House Bill HB 917. that are considered companion bills to the medical freedom bill that everyone's been hearing all over the news, that we were originally told across the state, nation, and world by Governor Ron DeSantis and our state Surgeon General, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, back on September 5th of 2025, that they had plans to end all vaccine mandates.
Hmm.
This is a process because, for those that may not know, our state surgeon general does not have the authority to necessarily wipe out all vaccine mandates. That's not within his jurisdiction, if you will. The governor can do this, but there has to be a legislative process. So when they made this announcement on September 5th of last year, they immediately received a ton of backlash, and that became very troublesome because it was not well received by big pharma, lobbyists, all the things. And then the other side was excitement and just like hope, right? Because the whole point to this is not to remove your right to get a vaccine.
Hmm.
So I hope the listeners understand that this is not removing your right to vaccinate. You can vaccinate as much as you want, however you want. It's giving individuals the choice. And the reason why this is so important is because when you mass vaccinate and you do what happened during the COVID-19 pandemic and you don't give people a choice, now you're left with the aftermath of harm and death. And that is not okay. So where there is risk, there must be choice.
Hmm.
Medicine is not a one size fits all. So we want people to have the choice. So this process became a two-step process. The first was going to be the Department of Health was going to hold a workshop and be able to kind of discuss what things the state surgeon general was going to be able to help with when it comes of removing the vaccines. And there were 4 vaccines that were proposed for the Department of Health to be able to remove for school attendance, and that was going to be hepatitis B, the Hib vaccine, pneumococcal, and varicella. So those were the only 4 that were discussed. It has not been implemented yet. And then the second half of this was going to be bringing forward these 2 bills to then put verbiage in them to specifically say ending all vaccine mandates in the state of Florida, and then bring it to our governor. But this unfortunately did not happen when those bills were filed within the past week. We all woke up at the same time in the state of Florida, and the medical freedom groups got to see that not only were the bills filed, none of the verbiage that was supposed to include ending all vaccine mandates was in the bills. It was completely gutted. So, to our surprise and to our, you know, disappointment, they removed it entirely, which means not only do we not have it in the bill to even start the process, now the thought process is you have to move forward with amendments, which is a little bit easier to do than starting from the ground up, but still very difficult to do.
Why would they do that?
It's a great question. For those of you that may not know, we have Governor Ron DeSantis, who's been in office for quite some time. This year, he is not able to run again. There have been some
What does that
chatter.
mean, not be able to?
Right. So he's not able to run for governor again. His term limits are up this year, which is
Hmm.
extremely, terrifying for a lot of Floridians because he has been the beacon of medical freedom in the sense of backing some of the things that he has. I'm not going to say that he's not done great things because he has, but there has been numerous times where he could have done originally what he said he was going to do and he didn't. So the medical freedom groups know exactly what I'm speaking of, and those that maybe live outside of the state may not be as familiar with that. There's a lot of pressure in our government, just like any other government. And, we believe that he was possibly approached and by lobbyists, big pharma, etc., to maybe sway and pressure to not put this verbiage in here because eventually he may want to go other places outside of Florida because he cannot run for governor again. And it just kind of when we woke up and we saw that this verbiage was not in there, it kind of makes you wonder who got to him, what happened, because this was pretty much a well understanding since they came forward on their own on September
Hmm.
5th and made this announcement to now be able to not meet that expectation, how that looks. However, like you mentioned in the beginning of the show, the amount of press, media, social media, reels, all of these things that are going out that are claiming Florida is free and that we've ended
Hmm.
all vaccine mandates. The reason why you and I are talking today is to clear the air that we are not ending all vaccine mandates. There is nothing currently stated anywhere that that is going to happen. And people need to know and be a little outraged so that you know
Mhm.
what to do and how to get involved to try to see if we
Mhm.
can salvage what was promised and has not been delivered.
So just to clear it up, just so that everyone understands that the bill you guys had approved, right? And you're saying you had approved as a freedom group or whatever that bringing forth, this is the bill we want, and you expected that to go to committee. Is that
Correct.
the right
Yes.
terminology?
That's
Okay.
that's that's an easy way to say it.
And then how does DeSantis fit into this at this point?
Right. So at the end of the day, your governor has the right to, move forward with bills, veto a bill, kill it altogether. And so at this point in time, in order for it to be implemented permanently, because for those of you that heard me say the Department of Health was working with our state surgeon general to remove those 4 vaccines, that is not being put into law. That is not a permanent solution. Anyone can come behind that has authority now that also our state surgeon general cannot run for office again this year as the state surgeon general. So we're being left open, if you will, to have additional new blood come in that we don't know how they're necessarily going to address medical freedom. So the Department of Health portion is not legal in the sense of it's not legalized or put into law. Excuse me. It's not being
Mhm.
put into law. So it can be reversed. The reason why we want to put it through legislation is so that it hardwires it and it makes it harder for people to come behind and try to dismantle it. So Governor DeSantis has the right to push this forward and to make this happen in order to keep his hands clean and do this the right way, if you will. It's to have these bills presented with the verbiage, it go through the committee processes, and then he sign it. But somehow, when the verbiage gets removed, it now makes it a little bit harder for us to be able to move forward and get these things into the bill. With that being said, Jody, there's a lot of things in the bill that people are, dare I say, taking the breadcrumbs. There are some things in it, although the verbiage in either bill is not identical. Um, there are suggestions that they're going to bring in a philosophical exemption. Right now, Florida just has medical and religious. So the Senate bill suggests bringing in a philosophical exemption. They also talk about enhancing informed consent, meaning not only do you have to verbalize it, they're requiring you, especially for children, that you cannot vaccinate under any circumstances without a parental signature, that you are informed and that you understand what you're agreeing to. So that's part of the bill as well. In addition to over the counter ivermectin being available, which is a big thing for a lot of people, although in my opinion
Mhm.
should not negate ending the vaccine mandates. And
Nope.
then of course, we were supposed to see the ending all vaccine mandate verbiage in there, which is completely omitted.
Okay. So, but it's done. I mean, Florida, yeah, like who do you who are you confident in the people that are running for governor and
Well,
attorney
we have
general?
we have
I mean, not
a
attorney general,
state surgeon general.
yeah.
We have quite a few candidates that are running for governor. There are, Byron Donalds. We have Jay Collins. Byron Donalds has the backing of Trump. Jay Collins is very close to DeSantis and has a lot of the same, viewpoints. There's also Fishback, who has a lot of good things that he's saying out loud, but has kind of a history that begs to question maybe if he's appropriate to be running for candidate. And also, he's making a lot of promises that seem a little too good to be true. And then
Mm,
we have Paul Renner, who is really the top candidate for the medical freedom movement that a lot of our medical freedom groups have tried to put to the forefront. He is definitely America first, and he used to run as the former Speaker of the House in Florida, and also he was a Navy commander, and so
mm,
Christian man, and has
mhm,
backed a lot of the medical freedom beliefs. But the problem is a lot of people don't know about him. His name is not as big as some of these other ones. And so it's really giving the listeners the opportunity to do some more research on him. Please make sure that we're not just taking what these gentlemen have said, what they're saying to you. Please back it with their actions. A lot of these candidates did not hold firm, especially during the pandemic. They did not try to, protect our medical freedoms. And this is where it's very important that if they didn't do it then, but they're telling you that they are now, you should really question that. Not to say that people cannot change, but history does speak for itself. So
Hmm.
please just be very weary.
If you are a nurse that is fed up with the sick care model, I have a solution for you. My name is Melissa Schreitfatter, and I am the owner and founder of the Functional Nurse Academy. FNA is the most comprehensive functional medicine training program on the market, specifically tailored to nurses. It is self-paced and equips LPNs, RNs, and nurse practitioners to practice functional medicine, address the root causes of dysfunction, and start their independent functional medicine practices. At FNA, you will learn how to order labs, functional health reports, create customized wellness plans, package and price your services, and even how to market your brand effectively. Graduates earn 90 nursing CEUs, and then they qualify for multiple board certification titles. They also will have access to our exclusive tools, such as our Functional Nurse Toolkit, our social media and marketing kit. And I don't want to just train you and send you on your way. So you also will get access to me each month via the Functional Nurse Academy monthly mentorship program, where you will be able to attend a live class with me each month. So say goodbye to sick care and start your dream career as a functional medicine nurse. Enroll today at functionalnurseacademy.com.
Free, and just make sure you educate yourself. But the medical freedom groups as a whole are supporting and backing Paul Renner, Renner. He is the top candidate for this that they are looking to hope to put in place of Dr. Ron DeSantis when that time comes.
Hmm. Well, I think, this is probably why a lot of Americans are like, doesn't matter, about voting,
Yeah.
doesn't matter, because once people get power and they don't want to leave it and they can go on to do other things, I'm assuming DeSantis is probably going to run for president,
Right.
or he's in the, you know,
Possible running. Yeah.
yep, he's in the possible running. And like you said, lobbyists and big pharma, in his pocket, maybe. I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's really, 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 really frustrating when we give so much of our time
Oh,
to these causes, especially like you with the legislation piece of it. It's like you go and you volunteer your time and you're doing all these things and taking away from your family because it's a cause you believe in. And you got a governor that's really, I mean, he was out there, talking about COVID. We're not doing this, we're not doing that. And he stuck to it. And then, at the ninth inning, he's like, changes the bill.
yeah. The old bait
That's
and switch.
that's
The old bait
yeah,
and
like,
switch.
right. So it's
Well,
super frustrating.
it's I'm glad that you mentioned it though, because so many people will join forces and want to get involved, and then when certain things don't happen, they are extremely frustrated. It's devastating, right? You put in all this time and effort, you're taking time away from your family, like you said. You're very passionate because I see what's happening on the front lines. You see what's happening in your communities, what's happening to our individuals, our patients, and what this looks like for our children and even as adults. Like, if you start giving away just a little bit, they take a lot, and people don't
Mm,
seem to think that it's going to happen until it's too late. So we always encourage people to want to get involved on a local and state level, whether that's getting to know your candidates, showing up to events, going to your town hall meetings, writing to your candidates, you know, figure out what you agree with, what you don't agree with, but really stand firm in that. It's not like you have to do like I do and go in front of your state legislators and speak on record. It's really just
But it's
putting the
good if you
infamous.
do.
It is. I mean, and
Mhm.
also showing your
Especially as a
face.
nurse. Mhm.
Well, and I for probably about a year, I was speaking out, but you never saw my face. And I will tell you, unfortunately, it didn't have as much of an impact until I came forward and showed my face. Now, when that happened, a lot of other things followed that, and my safety and a lot of other things happened. That's really terrifying. But like you said, when God calls, we answer. And I don't know, I've had this divine protection that I could never be more grateful for. And people have prayed for me and they send me, encouraging messages to please keep going. And that really means a lot because it is very lonely and isolating. But if we don't stand for something, we will all fall. And that is the point to make, that at some point you have to care. The nurses striking in New York and hopefully in California, us coming forward in our states to try to educate ourselves. I don't come from politics. This is not what I want to necessarily be doing, but it's a matter of life and death, literally. We saw this during
Mhm.
the pandemic. So I don't fault DeSantis because I understand that there's a lot of things at play here. However, you are representing the people. It is your duty, it is your job to sit here and not only say what you're going to do, but actually act it. And for these candidates to feed off of that and know that this is their year to potentially take precedence of him, I
Mhm.
want the listeners, especially in Florida, to understand your vote will matter in one way or another, whether you choose to not vote because you don't think it has an impact or you show up at the polls. It's extremely important that you exercise your right. And then, depending on how things unfold, we go from there, but not letting it push you so far down. Because when we got this information about this bill, I'm not going to lie, I spent half the night just absolutely devastated. But I could have unpacked it and sat in that and just let it destroy me, or I could use it as fuel to talk about it like we did, go on Steve Kirsch's show, explain what's really happening, educate the masses, you being gracious enough to have me here, and really setting the record straight. You're being fed a line of BS. Florida has not ended all vaccine mandates. This is what's really happening. This is what we need to do. And these are the people that are accountable. And people need to want to change that. And so I really hope that you've learned something from this here, that Florida, although is free in so many ways, we're not at the end of the day like you're being told. And everyone looks to Florida and the United States to be that change. But we need people to be willing to stand with us. Don't give up just because we've had some setbacks. This is how we continue to move forward. It's a journey. Unfortunately, we
Mhm.
may not have won that battle, but we are hoping to win the war. And that's why we keep going.
Yeah, well said, Nicole, well said. I mean, you hit on all the points that I really wanted to touch on, especially the fear part of it and how you had more of an you wanted, you were behind the scenes. I remember, when you first came on Nurses Out Loud and it's like, I don't want this. And well, and it's like, absolutely, we were a radio only podcast. And then we decided to do video. And so you are well spoken, you are likable, you are authentic, you your light shines before you, and really that's what draws people. That's
I
what draws
appreciate that.
people.
I appreciate that.
And I'm so proud to know you and be your friend and to have worked very closely with you for so long. I know your heart and what would you tell any of the nurses that are out there listening that feel like they want to get involved?
Mm,
Um,
that's a great question.
where should they start? Like, what would be a good first place to start?
So my opinion on this may be different than others. I know like within the hospital they have nurse councils and they have different things that you can get involved in, where I'm not saying that those cannot have some sort of impact. The real change starts at a local level. It's really
Mhm.
important that people recognize the local level of government is almost more important than state, because of you have more of a chance to get in and to know your candidates and be more one-on-one because of the accessibility, really trying to form with other like-minded nurses to talk about things that are not going well. We are in a profession that is very high risk, high liability, and you are putting yourself out there, and it's very dangerous. A lot of nurses may not understand how dangerous our job can be when it comes to the risk and the liability. And when you don't have organizations backing you, you don't have safe staffing, when you don't have things implemented to protect your patients, which ultimately will protect you, that is concerning. And where it can be absolutely terrifying, and there can be limitations depending on the organization, that you cannot speak out on certain things. I have done it for 5 years. It can be done. I don't wear
Yes.
my uniform. I don't talk about where I work. I completely separate that, because at the end of the day, I'm not speaking to where I work. I'm speaking to the system. This is not personal. The system is broken. And so, as nurses, it takes you wanting to come forward and stand together in solidarity to address things that may not be going well, whether that's forming your own alliance within your community, partnering with your county commissioners, maybe going to a state level and becoming familiar with your legislators and explaining certain things that are going on. It will not be easy. It's
Mhm.
definitely going to take years. I mean, we're years in this now, and I could never have imagined we would have been as far as we are. So it takes time, it takes perseverance, it takes a lot of grit. And it's, unfortunately, it's politics, it's not
Mhm.
personal. And we have to learn that, coming from an empathetic profession where we do have high emotions and we want to show people our heart. And most of us are not in this for the money, because there's no amount of money that could pay us the stuff that we do. It's a calling. And to know that you are a part of something bigger and greater to make that impact, what that looks like for your community. When I show up to work, it's an absolute hot mess in so many ways. But I have to remember that in my community, my children could be brought to this hospital, my family, my friends, there's people that I care about in this community. And it matters to me that when you come to our facility, that I know you're going to be safe. And where it may not involve me in the emergency department, because that's not my place of work, specifically, I need to know that we work together and we collaborate to ensure that safe practices are there. So the whole point to it is saying is, you want to get involved. No longer can we put our head down. The
Mhm.
longer we keep putting our head down and pretending it's not existing, you will become a product of the system. You eventually will be affected in a way that will bring you down with it. And we don't want that, which is why we have the largest nursing shortage to date, why we have all these nurses with inexperience. Okay. We don't have enough experienced nurses at the bedside because they understand what's happening. Why we're shipping in all these international nurses to replace what they say are American nurses not wanting to work. All of these things, it's by design. If we continue to let it be this way, we will fall, and your time is going to pass anyways. So try to find something that emboldens you to want to come forward, whether it's the safe staffing, addressing acuity needs, resources, etc. And again,
Mhm.
local and state is your best way. Federal is amazing, but is a lot harder to do. But you do have a voice. And people always said, Nicole, you're crazy. You're not going to make change. And to that, I have to say, I was part of the group that removed fluoride from the water in Florida. I'm part of the group that got the COVID-19 vaccine mandates completely wiped from Florida. It was not easy, but it can be done. And don't let
Mhm.
anybody tell you that you cannot do something. Use that as the fuel to keep going, because I promise you, it just takes one. Just takes one to start the process. Others will follow, and you don't have to know it. You learn as you
Mhm.
go. It's not perfect. I'm not liked by everybody. That's okay. But like Jody said, those that know me know that my heart is ride or die. And we don't have to agree. I just want to make sure that your rights are protected too.
Yes, yes. There was a comment on this Facebook group, and someone had nurse Facebook group here in Arizona, and someone commented that they hate the President Trump and Bobby Kennedy, what they're doing, that they're ruining healthcare.
Mm.
And I commented back, and I was like, well, I think that they're doing great things for
Mhm.
healthcare
Right.
and medical freedom. And a girl that I worked with, she commented on there,
Oh.
and she said, I respect you, but I vehemently disagree, and da 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 da. And I responded back uh, to her. I I said something, to the fact that, I respect your position. I realize that we both have had different hills that we're going to die on.
Exactly.
And she goes, I know what yours are. They're not mine. but I respect it. And I said, yes, I respect yours. She goes, I just don't want to get punched in the face again. You know what I mean?
Right.
And she's a tiny little girl. And I was like, yes. And that's the thing. I said to her, we're going to go out and have some coffee and we're going to talk,
I love it.
because this was not, something for a text.
Right.
And again, I tell people this all the time. It's not our job to change people's minds. My job, or my purpose in having a coffee with her is not to say, there's this, and look at this, and, watch this documentary and da 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 da. Because again, that's not her passion.
Right.
Her passion is, safe, being nursing
Right.
safety. And I heard somebody say, I don't know, I think this is like some old political phase, but you don't have you don't have to agree with somebody all the time. If you agree with somebody 80% of the time, they are not your enemy. And
Yeah.
I think with nursing being so female dominated,
Mhm.
you and I, we bring masculine energy, right? And but when we understand like how guys, how guys battle it
Right.
out. There's things that you and I haven't agreed on, and
Right.
we battled it out on
Right.
on video. But
Right.
we're respectful and we
Course.
understand where we're coming from. So that's the thing, nurses. I say, take the emotion out of it. It's great to get to know new people and network, but don't, team up in your little cliques,
Right.
and then, brush people aside. Oh, I've been here for 2 years. I know this. I can get into this event and that event. And, power and
Right.
influence is what people, I think they get twisted. And that's where it
Mhm.
shows their real heart.
Right.
How are you going to act when you do get some power and you do get some, people coming in and,
Right.
like you, thank you for fighting, keep fighting. I'm supporting you. So yeah, get involved and, and understand that even if somebody, that's why with these nursing strikes, I'd love to work closer with them.
Yeah. I know that.
And how anybody would want to say, oh, I don't believe, I think the vaccines are great. Well, think the vaccines are great. But if
Here's
you look
why
at
I
your code of ethics,
right.
we're all autonomous individuals and we all deserve that. So,
And also, two things can be true, right? I mean, I feel like we just always miss that mark. You can say that vaccines may have helped at some point, or you may think that they're great, but we can also say, as per the insert and evidenced by these individuals that have been harmed and no longer with us, that they may not be the best. And we want to question it and want better testing, transparency, etc. And I really am glad that you brought that up, Jody, because not only was it brave of you to post under that comment. I think that's part of the problem. People are too afraid to start the conversation. They're scared because they don't want to have people push back or think of them differently. I'm here to tell you that, the dead cannot cry out for justice. We have to speak and use your voice. And we've talked about this numerous times. I don't sell anything. I don't have a book. I don't have a website. All I do is show up and use my voice. I don't have anything else necessarily to offer people except my experience and letting people know how I work the system, how we could do this, but it doesn't necessarily have to be my way the whole way. The fact that you were able to post that comment, have that cordial disagreement, and then double down and say, hey, I'd love to meet with you. And again, express to the listeners not to sit here and shove all this down your throat. Even within the medical freedom movement, I work with people who are shoving things down people's throat. It's intense. If it was me, I'm going to immediately shut off. That's not how
yep,
we reach people. It's planting the seed. It's having a conversation. It's being understanding. And a lot of people will disagree with me. They'll say, we're on year 5. We're over it. We're past that point. That may be for you. But if you think you're going to get anyone over to our side by acting like a complete moron and putting them down and trying to force them to think a certain way, this is not a dictatorship. We are here to have cordial dialogue, to have
yeah,
information discussed so that we can express maybe I learn stuff new every day. And where I may not agree with it, I have a better understanding of the other side. That takes real leadership, real maturity. And like you said, those that continue to use their influence and power and use it in a way to manipulate the system, all you're showing me is that you're not a good leader and that you have a ton of weaknesses and that you're not willing to learn or listen to someone who may disagree with you. And that is going to be our downfall and why it's so
Mhm.
important that people understand we don't have to agree, but we are a community. This is our
Mhm.
livelihood. And it matters to be able to come in solidarity, to have some sort of common ground. And why a lot of these medical freedom groups are very divided because they don't agree 100% on all these things. Who cares?
Who
At the end of the
cares?
day, end the mandates. We want to end the mandates so that we can go to school, we can go to college, we can attend the clinical sites. We're trained to wear PPE, have hand washing, all of the things. A vaccine being injected in your arm does not necessarily mean you cannot be a productive member of society or that I cannot be a good nurse to deliver good care. We all know that's crap and that we can take great care of patients. How do I know that? Because in the beginning of the pandemic and the swine flu and Ebola, all of these other things that I've lived through as a nurse, there wasn't a vaccine for all this stuff. I cared for everybody the way I should. I followed all the protocols with the things that we are taught, and I protected myself. By definition, I should no longer be here because I was an unvaxxed nurse face to face with COVID patients. I should have been gone.
Mhm.
Let make it make sense. There are ways to there's always another way. And for people to say it's one way or another, that's harmful. And that is why we have to be able to come together and realize that even though these bills that we're talking about are specific to Florida, eventually when one state does and takes an initiative, other states will follow. And that's why it's
Mhm.
so important that people want to get involved. And again, the blue states are forming their own alliances right now. East and
Yep.
West Coast vaccine to go against Trump and HHS secretary. It's wild. And these people are
Hmm.
having
Like
all of their
basically
rights.
start their own like CDC kind of
Yes,
thing.
and
Yeah.
all their rights are being stripped. That's
Hmm.
terrifying because there's a lot of people in these states that are red, conservative, or wanting to fight for freedom, and they're losing everything. How is that a constitutional republic? It doesn't make sense. We are going against all the things here, and people are just sitting idle. They don't feel like they have a stake in this game, and it's like you do. But if you
Mhm.
sit back and don't say anything, you're no longer going to be able to have those civil liberties, and they will be gone if not
Mhm.
forever. So it is so important people understand what's happening and get involved and understand that this is coming to your doorstep if it hasn't already.
Yeah, and to think say they get their mandates and or they keep their mandates and they have this alliance and medical freedom and all these things are pretty much stripped away from us. You know who's going to be safe? You and I are going to be safe. You know why we're going to be safe? Because we've developed a community of
Yes,
like-minded individuals
right,
who will homestead, would share food, would all
right.
resources, all of those things. And believe you me, I don't think that time is that far off
No,
at all.
agreed. And
Uh,
and like the hospital, most people will say, "Get out of the hospital system, run for the hills." In a perfect world, we would all be able to leave a system that's this broken, but there's too many vulnerable people stuck behind. These are our communities that need people that want to do the right thing, which is why Jody and I stay, in addition to others, because it does matter. And, fleeing from it does not solve the problem. It's pushing back, it's challenging, just like in these blue states. If you enact these East and West Coast alliances and you strip away all their freedoms because you've just sort of decided to stay idle or you just didn't feel like there was a way to fight, they're going to have more people flee to the red states. And that's not necessarily a solution. We have to be able to hold the
mhm.
line, as I say, in these
Yeah,
states and fight like hell because your children depend on it, and everybody
yeah.
else's freedom. So it's just the time is now. We are way past the time. And using these platforms and individuals being gracious enough to share these stories and get the word out, because I'm telling you, it just sends me into orbit when I continue to see people posting things that they feel is happening in Florida and it's not, and they're not asking questions and they're continuing to spread misinformation, which can't believe I'm saying
Mhm.
that. And it causes a lot of problems because I'm
Yeah.
like,
Or how about not misinformation, lies,
yeah, okay.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's
maybe lies
right.
is a little tough because
Yeah.
they don't know they're spreading
They don't.
lies,
They don't.
falsehoods.
Right.
falsehood.
And you're like wanting to let people know. And then they're like, oh, you don't know anything. I'm like, I know you don't know who I am and I'm not anybody, whatever, but I do kind of know. So, there's a lot of people that are just rolling with big names, like big names and influencers and everything else. And they just don't want to entertain the conversation because they know better. They're using their influence, all
Mhm.
the things. And we just want people to know, like, it's not happening in Florida. We're kind of up a creek right now. We're going to pray hard that we can band together and to get this verbiage amended and into the actual bills. Because there's a whole nother section I didn't bring up to you that has to do with forced quarantine and isolation. That has
Oh,
always
Lord.
that has always been, it always has been, which is another topic for another day. But they added it to these bills to say that even though we could force quarantine and isolate you for deadly diseases at a state level, now there's got to be steps to be followed to get to that point. We're going to exclude vaccinations. So in the bill verbiage, they put that section in there just to highlight that even if we decide to force quarantine and isolate, we can never force vaccinate you. So that is the big part of this bill that I have gone off the rails with, but the end the mandate is the most important here. So
Yeah.
we're gonna stick to that. But just so you guys know, always read your bills. What people highlight out of them is
Mhm.
very telling. When you actually go into your bills, you would be shocked what they shove in there and kind of try to hide. And
Ever felt torn between your conscience and your job? You're not alone. It's time for nurses to rise, to lead with integrity, grit, and faith. Earn CEUs that teach you how to stand firm in truth and advocate without fear at righteousrn.com. That's righteousrn.com. Protect your license, your integrity, and your peace.
this is why a lot of these groups take with what they can, just like in federal level. They're
Mhm.
going to give you this bill. They're going to tell you this is what we're doing, and everyone's focused over here. Meanwhile, you didn't read the bill entirely, and they've shoved all this other stuff in here that is
Yeah.
potentially removing your rights. So always be
Mhm.
diligent and do your research.
Yeah, we have a bill that I just gave my opinion on. It's a bill for pharmacists to be able to dispense um, vaccines like COVID, or any other EUA that comes out in case of a pandemic.
Oh.
Like they would have kits basically.
Mm.
And it's for HIV too, I believe. And, just some basic ones. But I'm reading the bill and it sounds pretty good, right? Because we need to take pressure off of these people or pressure off of the healthcare staff, the system, uh, because a lot of people are using ERs as
Mhm.
primary care.
Mhm.
So theoretically, this is amazing. Yes, go to your local pharmacy and get, your treatment for whatever thing.
Right.
Yes, if they can. But I said, I support this with the following changes, your amendments. And one of them was informed consent. There has to be
Right.
some standard that they're following, that it's informed consent and shared decision making,
Yes.
that the patient needs to know all of the risk and the benefits. What happens if I don't? What science
Right.
do you have? And if I don't have any science, you have to tell me I don't have any science, you know, that. And then I said, who's going to watch the patient? Who's going to
Exactly.
oversee the patient?
Monitoring.
What if a reaction happens?
Mhm.
You didn't address that in the bill. You're going to wait until something happens and then say, "Oh, let's put in
Right.
rescue drugs." Is there rescue drugs in that little kit that you can give them? Who's
Exactly.
going to monitor the patient? I can't see the pharmacist having the time to
Right.
set people up in a row and monitor them. And then something happens,
Yeah.
any safety signal, dizzy for a second, I don't care.
Who's reporting
Who's
it?
reporting that to VAERS?
Amen. Because
And
that
I said then, but like that was really
that's
one
amazing.
of the yeah,
That's
yeah.
but again, which is why I say it's so important that these individuals that are being put into office or running for office, obviously you're not going to be able to know everything, but when we're in a day and age where medical freedom or things and medicine play such a huge role as they do, you have to have some sort of background in this, or you should have some classes or some teachings to follow, because how could you put a bill out like that and never include anything like that that you just said? That's absolutely why it's so important nurses have a seat at the table, or some sort of
Mhm.
healthcare advocate can give their input, because then now you're putting all this liability on a pharmacist who
Yep.
is usually the only one in a pharmacy for hours on
Mhm.
hours, and they're getting bombarded because of the amount of big pharma. So to think that they have to stop what they're doing, spend adequate time to inform,
Mhm.
educate, blah, 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 then inject, then watch them. I mean, come on. Like you said,
Mhm.
it sounds good, but you're not implementing the appropriate resources like they do in healthcare with nurses. Sounds good that we could do all these things, but when you don't give
Yep.
us the tools, you're setting us up to fail. And at the end of the day, who
Mhm.
takes the heat for it? The
Yep.
nurses, the pharmacists. So bravo. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Do you know if do they like give you feedback, or do they talk, or is it just one and done, or like
I don't
how it
know.
works?
I paid $35 and I'm going down to the state capitol, I
I
think
love it.
February 11th for Advocacy Day.
I am
And
stoked.
I am.
You gotta do a
It's
live.
like,
You gotta do a live or something while you're there. That's cool.
oh, yes.
Yes, you
Yes. Yeah, you
should.
can.
That'd be
Yeah.
so cool.
So
Yeah,
I
see?
will.
Yeah.
So meet legislators and understand the process and stuff. I mean, this year, I think, the trauma of, blowing the whistle for 4 years, I've kind of just feel like being moved in another direction. And part of that is laying on my heart is to engage with people face to face.
I love it.
And I want to be more involved in the community. And part of it, I don't, have any uh, hopes of running for office or anything. I have been approached by someone who was like, "I'll help," and I'll pray on it if the time comes and
Yeah.
everything. But right now, ethics and righteous RN and nurses out loud. That's what I focus
Right.
on.
And it's needed.
But having said that, I want to just bring this up before we close. I don't know if this happens in Florida, but in Scottsdale and in our surrounding cities, Phoenix, uh, we've seen a lot of pharmacies, like in Walgreens or CVS, uh, th- pull back their hours.
Mm.
Okay, there used to be Honor Health, a level one trauma center, Osborne. We had a 24-hour pharmacy that was right there, Walgreens. They stopped that years ago.
Yeah, we don't.
Years ago. Now they close all pharmacies everywhere. They close from like 12 to 1 to take a lunch break.
Right.
And then they're closing. If somebody calls off, they put up a Facebook post that says unfortunately our pharmacy is closed today. And it's like,
Hmm.
what?
Yeah, we've had changes when it
And
comes
we want
to,
them to like inject people?
well, so very valid point, right? We used to have more 24-hour pharmacies. We don't. It's very few and far between. And it's actually terrifying because in our hospital, well, all of them that I've worked at have had their own pharmacies, and they're able to help patients who are maybe not have a pharmacy, or maybe, not close or whatever, or it's closed, to
Mhm.
dispense, but they're only like 8 to 5, 8 to 6.
Yeah,
And that's just
right.
for ours. So then if it's a holiday, if it's a weekend, like that adds to our level of patients staying in the hospital, because if you can't discharge them and ensure that they can get their prescriptions, it's considered not a safe discharge. You're not allowed to let them go. So, to speak to what you're saying, we don't have as many 24-hour pharmacies. And I do know in other states, it's more common that the staffing has been an issue to close. And that's why a lot of people get their medications from other places, countries, stuff like
Mhm.
that, and other areas,
Yeah.
because they're trying to find alternatives. So I agree with you. That's a whole probably other show in itself, because there's a lot of pharmacists that will
Mhm.
tell you that it's almost impossible. I mean, to have hundreds and hundreds of prescriptions, one pharmacist, and then be able to do all the other things, answer questions, give the vaccinations, whatever the case may be, it's setting them up to fail. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
it happened during the pandemic. And so this kind of propelled, and why it's very interesting that that is a bill being presented
Mhm.
to your
Mhm.
state. I think that is the underlying root cause of why that's being brought up is very telling, and that's from the pandemic. So
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah,
Lots of things happened during COVID that people don't
I
understand
know,
that will forever change our life,
right?
And guys, you heard this, the sponsor ad in the beginning, West Cocoa Pharmacy in Cocoa, Florida. They are a proud sponsor of Nurses Out Loud. And so I want to shout them out, reach out to
Perfect.
them. You can go to cocopharmacy.com. That's COCOA pharmacy.com. And they are really like a neighborhood pharmacy
Yes, they are.
and that have helped people. And you can get medications like ivermectin, fenbendazole, and you can
Mhm.
even talk to Nurse Donna for free. Nurse Donna, she has a calling as well, and
I
she's a
love her.
sweetheart. And I know she's the best. And she's like, I go, Donna, she's like, no, they'll give them out my phone number, and I talk to them, and and I ask them, and I just meet them where they are, and
She's the epitome of an angel. Like, when I talk
she
about God calls through her like no other. Have you ever met her in person?
yes,
Yes,
I did when
she's
I
just, oh,
She was
amazing.
like, I have to meet you. I have to meet you." I was like, "I have to meet you too."
Yeah,
And she took us out to lunch.
yeah.
She
Her
was
and
the sweetest girl.
her family, my husband knows her boys, and obviously I met her through the medical freedom movement. She helped me out in the very beginning when it came to some things, exemption wise and just some information. And she is just one of the most genuine human beings. Her and her family deserve nothing but the world. And so the fact that she came forward and she was somebody who spoke about, the ivermectin and was put in the position that she was, and then chose to continue to work in, where she's at and help people, is just a really true testimony to the value that nurses bring and why it's so important that
Yeah.
groups want to include us. We have education, we have degrees, certifications, we have experience.
Yeah.
Why would people not want to utilize that in policies and procedures and at a legislative level to enact changes beyond me? So yeah, she's amazing. So yeah, go see her, everyone that's listening.
Yes, yes. Cocoa Pharmacy, COCOA pharmacy.com. Well, Nicole, this was amazing. I could chat with you all the time. I think we need to dig into why pharmacies are closing in our
It'd be a good one. I
neighborhoods.
think it'd be a good
Yeah,
one.
and really find out. Yeah, I need to know more about that, I think.
Mhm. Yep, and part of your bill. I mean, that's huge. That's a big one. That's stemming from exactly what happened during the pandemic and trying to offload some of the responsibility, like you said. But what does that look like for these groups that are not being supportive? And CVS and Walgreens are known for how they treat their staff. So there's another thing there that might be uncovered as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, how can people find you and reach out to you?
So I have Twitter. It's HENNAC03. So Hennessy 03. And then on Instagram, which you can see the handle attached to my name down here, but it's hold, HOLD _ and then one word, the line CLNC, THELINE CLNC. I know it's a little hard, but hold
So
_ the line
we're
CLNC.
changing that.
We're going to
We're
try to fix
changing
it.
that.
But yeah, yes, yes,
You can also hear Nurse Nicole on the Nurses Report podcast.
yes.
And are you speaking weekly now?
Um,
Every Friday?
So
Or
we're still rotating. So yeah, so we're
still
still,
rotating?
yeah. So the Friday Q&A with Nurse David Wayne and Nurse Ashley Grogg on the Nurses
Yeah.
Report on America Out Loud. And then anywhere with our medical freedom groups in Florida, please reach out how you can get involved, follow along to see what we're doing to change what's happening in Florida. And we're just so glad that you guys are here listening and hopefully feel empowered to want to get involved. That's really the goal here, is to just give you guys the information to know what's happening and how you can make change with us.
Yes. All right, friend. Till next time. Peace. Thank you for listening to Nurses Out Loud. Nurses are called by our code of ethics to keep learning, do the research, and lead with moral courage and integrity, especially as healthcare changes. Keep doing the next right thing, especially when it's hard. If this show resonated with you, please like, share, and follow. It boosts us up in the algorithm so more people can find us. Until next time, friends, be safe, Be well, and God bless. And if this episode offers continuing education credit, check the show notes for the learning objectives, disclosures, and exactly how to earn your certificate.